Hello there, beautiful friends from around the world. I'm going to be your host, Blackenfist, for another Thought for Talk. And as usual, I am here with my co-host, Qaaman, but we have a very special guest today on this episode.
How's it going, guys? Good to be here.
And today we're going to be talking about Cell. More specifically, why is it that Cell needed to absorb Android 17 and 18? Now we know why he needed to absorb them. He needed them to get into his perfect form. But the question is, why does he need to absorb them for his perfect form? That question might seem a little strange at first, but when you think about it, something just doesn't add up. Now, Dr. Gero made a pair of cyborgs 18 and 17 to carry out his plan for revenge on Goku. Now, obviously along the way, he decided that 17 and 18 were not enough, and he went on to design Cell instead. It just seems to me though that Dr. Gero's plan for his perfect creation seems a little convoluted and very flawed. And what I mean by that is, it takes Cell years before he is even able to break out of his own chamber. And even after that, it takes him years after that to mature to the point where he is able to absorb the androids. And according to Dr. Gero's plan, the plan was the androids to survive in all that time Cell is developing, so that then Cell can consume them and absorb them into his being. But the thing is, that plan is very flawed. Something could have happened to the androids while Cell was developing. They could have been destroyed, they could have malfunctioned, they could have been defeated, and in that case, Cell would not be able to reach his perfect evolution on his own. And that's another question right there. Why did Dr. Gero design Cell to be so dependent on these other androids? Why not just design him to where he evolves into his perfect form on his own, or is able to transform on his own without the help of outside influences like the androids? It seems like Cell would be a much more well-designed creature if he was like that.
You raised some good points there, and I really think that the reason Cell needs to absorb the androids is that, obviously apart from the fact that that's the way he was designed, is that he would feel a deep-seated need within himself to go and absorb the androids. And although he is probably already the strongest fighter in, say, Trunks' timeline, it's built into him to go do it. And he could have been made to transform, but Dr. Gero, I think, deep down wanted to make Cell absorb the androids, because Dr. Gero, as we know, had his problems with the androids. He didn't like the androids necessarily. They were his weapons, and they disobeyed him. I kind of always saw it like a backup clause, so if the androids disobeyed him and betrayed him, 20 years down the track, he'd have this sentient creature that he created, this being that just goes and destroys the androids and absorbs them and creates one all-powerful warrior to basically fulfill his vision of world domination. But yeah, I'm not sure. He could possibly have been made to transform like Frieza. That's a possibility. The reason it took 20 years to create him, I guess, is because he is the ultimate fighter. He's supposed to be the ultimate being. He has cells from Goku, Vegeta, Frieza's father. He's got the DNA of the best fighters in the world, so, or in the universe even, so that's why his life cycle probably took so long to create him. But yeah, I definitely think the reason he has a need to absorb the androids is because that need is like built into his DNA. He just feels that need for more power, kind of like the Saiyans do. But that's basically my thoughts on that.
Well, to tell you the truth, Blackenfist, I think my answer's a bit simplistic, to be honest, but I've always felt that the reason why Cell needed the androids to become, you know, perfect in his perfect form was because of the fact that the androids came before him, and essentially because of the fact that Cell came afterwards, Gero couldn't necessarily program him with the androids inside of him because he came after, so it's like, well, you need them to be complete. And I think that the reason why he really needed the androids was because of the fact that if you look at Cell, especially when he was using that barrier against Goku, when Goku was shooting all of those key blasts, he learned that energy barrier that we saw the androids using, more in particular Android 17, and I think that their techniques and the way that they behaved to some degree, even though I don't think personalities really mattered, were really integral for Cell's advancement of a fighter. And I've always personally felt that because of the sadistic personality of the androids, obviously the main timeline androids were not as sadistic as the future ones, I've always felt that that was kind of part of what Cell needed to become more perfect, because the more evil you are, the more successful you would be towards, you know, accomplishing Dr. Gero's goals. And that's always been my theory on the whole matter.
I like Jay's answer that perhaps Gero designed Cell in that manner so that it was almost like a malicious payback to the androids. However, on the whole thing about Cell needing 17 and 18's abilities, that just raises another question in my mind. If it was abilities that Cell was after, and that was the reason why Cell really needed to absorb 17 and 18, then why is it that Gero didn't design Cell to absorb other characters like Krillin or Goku or Vegeta in that manner that he absorbs 17 and 18. Now, of course, I'm not talking about his normal absorption where he just pierces you with your tail. I'm talking about when he opens up his tail and swallows you up, just like how he did with 17 and 18. To me, it still raises questions on why is it that Cell is only able to absorb 17 and 18 in that manner. Yeah, of course, we know he's designed to absorb 17 and 18 specifically, but if it was for abilities like you guys say, then why is it that he's not able to do that with other characters? Because I feel like some other characters might be more useful in that department.
I know this might cause some mixed opinions, but there's actually a scene from Dragon Ball GT where Cell actually absorbs Kid Goku for like a very short instance, and he becomes extremely powerful. Like he's like blowing up with electricity, and I find that scene very interesting because that does show he's like, the power's overwhelming, and that kind of illustrates that if Cell does absorb a person in that way, even if he doesn't advance into what would be considered his perfect form, he could theoretically get a boost in power that would rival what he became from his original imperfect to his perfect form. So what I'm essentially saying here is that let's say Cell absorbed Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, right? I know it's basically impossible, but if he absorbed him, I think that he would actually get a boost in power significantly higher than going from his imperfect form to his perfect form. But the androids are kind of just to advance him biologically, and I think that's the fine line that we have to put here. Power versus advancement in body type.
Well, I'm just going to say it here because I know in the comments a lot of people are going to say it, GT doesn't count. But I still want to take your idea to heart. And I still think that that poses problems because if Cell was designed to absorb subjects like Gohan and Goku and stuff like that, then why did he never attempt to absorb them in the actual series? I mean, especially Gohan. In that fight, he was getting brutally beat up by Gohan, so I would imagine that maybe as a last resort, if Cell is seeing that he's not going to be able to win this fight, he's at least going to try to attempt to absorb Gohan, so at least he can have his abilities and his power within himself. And just the fact that Cell never attempted to absorb Gohan or Vegeta or anybody else in this manner, he never tried to swallow up anyone else besides 17 and 18, and the fact that he never attempted to do that tells me that Cell can't absorb someone like that. It tells me that he was specifically designed to absorb 17 and 18, which just brings up the question again, what makes 17 and 18 so special?
I just wanted to point out that we made a Thought for Talk episode 2 a while back when we were discussing the Cell Jrs. And I've always found it very interesting when we look at Cell when he spit out the Cell Jrs, I could use another word. They looked similar to his perfect form. And I've always felt, Blackenfist, going back to that second Thought for Talk, do you think that if Cell was in his imperfect form or his semi-perfect form, that the Cell Jrs would look the same way? Or do you think he needs the androids to do a type of technique like that?
I'd say that that's a possibility, Qaaman, but I think that he would probably only be able to do that in his perfect form as speculation. But one thing I will add is that, yes, there is two different types of absorption. And I do feel that the reason he doesn't try to absorb the Z Fighters in his imperfect or semi-perfect forms is because there would be no effect for him to do that, maybe rather than the same sort of power increase he might get if he was to absorb their life energy by stabbing them with his tail, if you get what I'm saying. So in GT, if we use GT as an example, even if you want to use that as an example, yes, that gave him a boost in power. But if you want to go and say that's non-canon, I would say him stabbing, say, Goku, Vegeta, Krillin, Piccolo, anyone like that, and stealing their life energy that way would give him the exact same power boost, and if he absorbed them into his being, that's also a possibility.
It could also be Cell's development. He was in perfect Cell and semi-perfect when he actually absorbed the androids, and I've always felt that his tail kind of changed over time, but I guess because of the fact that semi-perfect Cell did it, it doesn't really add to it. And he did do it in GT, but that's not canon, wink wink.
Well guys, I guess we're just gonna turn it over to you in the comments section and share your thoughts, because I feel like this could start a very interesting discussion about Cell that I haven't seen around too much. I really want to thank Super Jayain for joining us on this Thought for Talk.
Yeah, man, no, I appreciate you having me in the chat.
Yeah, guys, please check out his channel. He has some interesting content on there. And of course, hopefully you can come back to do more videos with us.
Yeah, I'd like that.
And which way would you guys rather be absorbed, by being stabbed or by being sucked up by Cell?